Ladies and gentlemen, the NBA season is over. It's over, folks. It is over, okay? And so today, I am going to be grading all the Eastern Conference teams, how they did in the regular season, combined with the playoffs, if they made the playoffs and or had aspirations for the playoffs and didn't make the playoffs, or if they had goals and dreams to completely miss the playoffs and achieved that very successfully, I guess. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be grading these teams, all right, because, you know, we need something to do. We're counting down the days till next season, all right? So let's just get right into it with a team that, to be honest, I thought would have had a little bit of a better season. I had some expectations for this team going into the season that were not met. And that's the Atlanta Hawks. Ladies and gentlemen, Atlanta, there was some talk Atlanta might actually be halfway decent this past season now. I guess they were halfway decent, but, you know, more was expected of them than just like the 6th seed, but barely even that. Right? You know, Trae Young, Kristaps Porzingis, Jalen Johnson at the start of the season, people were talking about that, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker came to the team, right? So everyone was like, wow, this team's going to be great. And then old Kristaps Porzingis played about 5 seconds for Atlanta. Trae Young played like 8 games, and they lost all of them before, you know, he was traded. And, you know, it was kind of, hey, what are we doing? And Dyson Daniels wasn't as good as he was last year either. So, you know, they ended up trading Kristaps. They ended up trading Trae Young. Both pretty good moves, in my opinion. And, I'd say generally, I'd probably give this, I wrote C+. I'm changing that right now. I'd say it was a B-. I'd say it was a B- from a season I was expecting maybe a B+, maybe an A- from. B- for Atlanta. Next up, the Boston Celtics. Boston, everyone thought they were going to be trash, playing team at best, gap year. They got no Tatum. They got no chance with no Jason Tatum. That's what everybody thought, except for, well, the Boston Celtics. Boston, they were the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They won like 56 games, yo. You got to give them a B+. I would have given them higher. I would have given them maybe an A-, maybe even an A, but they did blow a 3-1 lead to the Philadelphia 76ers. So, got to knock you some points there, Boston. But, you know, pretty good season for Boston in general. Everyone thought they were going to be trash. And they weren't. They were pretty good. Jaylen Brown was in MVP discussions at one point. Maybe probably should have honestly gotten an MVP vote. You know, you look at who was in his starting lineup. It's like, okay, maybe he is the most valuable player to his team. Not saying he should have won the award, but... And up next, the Brooklyn Nets. I gave him a D, because I don't even know... I mean, I guess they're rebuilding, so they're not trying to win, but... I watched, like, one Nets game this year. I genuinely think it was, like, 1, maybe 2. There's nothing you can say about this team. There's nothing you can say about Brooklyn. They're Brooklyn, and they're not good. Then the Charlotte Hornets, you know, they've been not good for forever and a day. You know what I'm saying? Except 2026, the Charlotte Hornets were actually pretty good. All right, and when I say 2026, I mean that portion of the season. 2025 portion of this season, them brothers won like 5 games. But the 2026 from January 1st on, they were one of the best teams in the regular season. You know, they blew out the Thunder, right? I think it was in OKC. They were one of the best teams to watch, one of the most entertaining teams to watch. They were a play-in team. I think they were the 9 seed. If they didn't lose so many games to start the season, they probably would have just outright maybe made the playoffs. But I'm going to give them a B- for the season. A B-. They were a play-in team. They didn't make the playoffs. Can't rank them that high. But, you know, they were really fun to watch. They turned it on. January 1st on. They were absolutely cooking. So, you know, and they're going to be pretty good next year. Charlotte's going to make the playoffs next year, no doubt in my mind. Charlotte, The Charlotte Hornets are making the playoffs in 2027. Then we've got the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls who, I mean, they've got Modest Bazelis. That's at least good for them. They got Modest Bazelis, and they lost so much that they got the 4th pick in the draft, which is actually pretty good for them. So you know what? I wrote D-. I might actually give them a D+. And they hired Tiago Splitter, so that's pretty good for them. Not counting that because, their season was the season's over now. That happened after the season ended. But, good for Chicago. They might actually do something noteworthy next season. But moving on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who did a few noteworthy things this season, one of which included trading Darius Garland for James Harden, and another one of those things being making the conference finals for the first time since 2018, in the first time in like 34 years without LeBron James. I gave him a B. It was a rocky season. No doubt about it. There were ups, there were downs, there were question marks. There's still question marks. There's people that think, hey, why would you trade for James Harden? There's people that think, hey, this team's not that good. And there's some people that think, hey, maybe this team's got something special. Maybe we got to give them another year. Maybe they'll actually do something next year. And, it's all over the place. I gave them a B, though. They made the conference finals. They might have got swept. They might have won 0 games in the conference finals. I'm going to give them B anyways, though, because they did finish, the 4 seed. They got, pretty consistent in the regular season after they traded for Harden. They made the conference finals. That is noteworthy. I gave them a B, though. They did get swept. Maybe a B is a little generous. Maybe it's not. But there you go. The Detroit Pistons, I gave a B+. How many games they win? Like 60? They won like 60 games. Cade Cunningham was in MVP talks. Jalen Duren was pretty fantastic throughout the regular season. He then fell off in the playoffs. But, just all in all, they were the number 1 seed. They won 60-plus games. They really built on what they did last year when they won 44 games and they were the 6th seed. I think people generally thought they'd probably be a little bit better at the very least the next season. And they turned out to be pretty great in the regular season. Now, in the playoffs, they did go to 7 games versus the Orlando Magic. That's not that good. And then they went to 7 games versus Cleveland and got blown out on their home floor in Game 7. So I thought about giving them an A-. I'm going to give them a B+ for their season. Then the Indiana Pacers gave them a D-. Might have even thought about giving them an F+. But I'm going to give the Indiana Pacers a D- because, they didn't want to win. And they didn't win games, so they kind of did what they set out to do in that sense. They did lose out on the 5th pick. We'll see if, it was worth it, because if Indiana comes back next season and is in championship contention, like if they make a conference finals, make a finals next season, which I think is a very real possibility with this Indiana team, then I think it'd be worth it trading that pick away for Zubats. But, I guess we'll have to wait and see. So I gave him a D-. Some people might be a little more critical of that trade because they did give away the 5th pick in the draft. I gave the Miami Heat an F for their season. Not because they were, some horrendous basketball team, but it's because they've been in the play-in for like 4 straight years. Please, Pat Riley, please, just rebuild, bro. If you don't get Giannis, rebuild. If Giannis Antetokounmpo is not a Miami Heat basketball player at the start of next season, please rebuild. Stop trying to trade for players. Stop trying to get, all these star players that don't want to come and play for your basketball team. Please, Pat Riley, please just rebuild. I'm so tired of seeing the Heat in the play-in every year. They get an F. They get an F, and it's going to be an F until they either rebuild or some way, somehow just become really good. But as long as the Miami Heat are in the play-in, they are an F. Okay, every single season, they're going to get an F rating from me. You know who else got an F grade from me? And it's even worse than Miami. It's the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks got an F minus. Because, frankly, well, they were terrible, for one. And two, they should have just traded Giannis at the trade deadline. The fact Giannis still hasn't been traded right now is kind of crazy. Just get it over with. I mean, come on. Trade Giannis. Trade him anywhere. Milwaukee, it's time to rebuild. Okay, even if you kept Giannis, you're not going to compete. So why even try? Why even bother? He should have been traded. He should have been traded 6 months ago. Right? So what are we doing? F minus for Milwaukee. Trade Giannis. Next up, it's the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks, I'm going to give their season, I'm going to grade it an F. No, I'm kidding. They get an A+. They won the championship. The New York Knicks are your NBA champions. How could you give them anything other than an A+? What a fantastic season. All right, up and down, regular season. Who cares? They won the championship. All right, they won the NBA championship. They even won the NBA Cup, so good for them too. They did that as well. Then the Orlando Magic. C+ is what I gave them. Really mid-season. They dealt with a lot of injuries, so that played a part. They fired Jamal Mosley the day after getting eliminated from the playoffs. Hopefully they can get a coach that can, get Orlando out of the first round. There's some talent in Orlando, there really is. But I just, they can't get all the pieces to stay healthy at the same time, and they can't really, it's just, man, just if all the pieces fall right into place, if they have a healthy season, if they have a pretty good head coach, Orlando might actually be a pretty decent team. Would have gave them a C-, but then they went to 7 versus the Pistons. I'll give them a C+. I'll be generous to Orlando. The Philadelphia 76ers, I gave a B-. They had a 3-1 comeback in the playoffs. They didn't have the greatest regular season of all time. Traded Jared McCain for kind of nothing. But they did have VJ Edgecombe on the team. They drafted him. Rookie season for him. Fired Daryl Morey. Tyrese Maxey was really great. I don't know. It's really a mixed season for Philadelphia. I'm going to give them a B-. Toronto gets a B+ because I don't really remember anyone having any expectations for Toronto. But they were a pretty good team, in the regular season. They were the 2 seed for a few weeks at one point in November or December. They were pretty good. They were really good, I should say, for a month. Scotty Barnes, fantastic player. The Raptors make the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. They go to 7 games versus Cleveland. Really solid season, especially considering they weren't really given many expectations to be good. And then the Washington Wizards. I'm going to give them a B. They didn't win any games. I think they won 2 games, but they got the first pick in the draft, and they also traded for Trae Young and Anthony Davis. I think they'll be pretty good next season. I think they've set themselves up well for that this season. Okay, so good for Washington. They might make the playoffs for the first time in 5 years? Well, by next year it'd be 6 years. When's the last time? The last time they played in the playoffs, their 2 best players were Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, and since then, both of those guys have been bought out from their contracts, and they're playing for minimum contracts on bad teams in the West. Oh boy, that's how long it's been since the Wizards have been in the playoffs. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I think they'll be good next year. I think they'll be good. So there you have it. Those are all my ratings, my grades for the Eastern Conference teams. We're going to go over it one more time. Atlanta gets a B-. Boston, B+. The Nets, a D. The Hornets, a B-. The Chicago Bulls, a D+. Cleveland gets a B+. Detroit, Cleveland got a B. Detroit got a B+. The Pacers got a D-. The Heat got an F. The Bucks got an F-. The Knicks got an A++. The Magic, C+. The Sixers, B-. The Toronto Raptors, a B+. And the Washington Wizards got a B. So there you have it. Those are all my grades, not ratings, all my grades for all the Eastern Conference teams from this NBA season.